Hey everyone, welcome back to FF Squared. I know it's been a minute since we recorded. I think we kind of sort of took the month of July off. Jesse and I, we just kind of had like family things and whatnot, but we're excited that it's August, 1 month to regular season, and it's sort of redraft season now. Um, so let's talk some redraft football.
Yeah, it's been a wild off season. Like I can't believe it's already almost here. Like we're like, oh yeah, we got 4 months, it'll be fine. And then before you know it, like we're into the preseason already, and before we know it, games are gonna be starting. So this is when all the redraft people finally get back into it. I've had a ton of people already reach out to me. They're like, hey, who should I draft in this league? I'm like, all right, what are the settings? And like go through the stuff we always do. But it's that time of year when people start coming back in your DMs and your text messages and all and stuff. They're like, oh yeah, fantasy football. I'm like, welcome back, my friends. I've been here for months, but welcome back.
Yes, we're the dynasty folks that every month is fantasy month for us.
Mm-hmm.
In your home leagues, do you typically draft after the last preseason games, or do you kind of draft earlier in August?
So I personally like it earlier just because it's more chaotic and I like messing with them. But they want to go up until I have two. I have one home league that has like we don't. One of them's dynasty, and then the other like staple home league is the last minute. They want to draft like Wednesday. And I'm like, dude, can we do it like not the day before? They're like, no, no,
Oh
no, push it
wow.
out as far. Like I'm like, all right, I guess we're gonna do Wednesday, and then of course it's on ESPN. I just want to be like, dude, can we get off of ESPN, please? Please get me off of ESPN. They're like, nope, ESPN, and I'm like, man, and that's why I put that tweet out where I was comparing sleeper draft board to ESPN app, and I was like, why would you use the ESPN app draft board? Like it's just that's a whole nother tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, I have two leagues where one's an auction league and one's a work league. The work league's on ESPN and
Mm-hmm.
the auction's on Yahoo. And for some reason, they both settle on the same day for drafting,
Oh,
and it's chaotic. And I've been lucky where it's been like 1 day apart, but like I would say 50% of the time it falls on the same Thursday before Labor Day, and it's just like, oh my god, people.
yeah,
Um,
it's like you got multiple picks going on at the same time. You're just like, I don't know. I'm gonna take this guy. Hope, yeah, I've been there before. That's not enjoyable.
yeah.
It's too stressful. It's like I don't know how the best ball guys do it, where they have like 50 slow drafts going on and they're just like
Oh
all at
my
the same
god.
time. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, just too much. I can't. It's too stressful.
But well, it's August. We've got preseason games starting, training camp in full gear. We've already seen some semi-breaking news with running backs, especially. So let's talk about ADP, risers and fallers. Um, let's talk about some of the fallers, right? Regarding to ADP. Do you have any particular player that you think whose ADP is going to start falling as preseason and training camp goes on?
So I'll pull up the bulletproof, and this is Dynasty ADP, but we're going to put a little redraft spin on it. So FYI, like if you're looking at these draft picks, they're not going to be the same as ESPN or anything like that. But yeah, it's the guys that don't have a home. So we've seen guys like Dalvin Cook. His value has tanked where early on in like best ball and redraft ADP, he was going a lot earlier. He was going pick like 50, pick 60 in that range. Now he's pushing out to like pick 100 in ADP, and you've seen him fall in Dynasty where he's pushing like the double digit rounds at this point. Um, Pacheco's another one because it's an injury. We don't know how like soon he's going to be back. So if you look at the running backs in particular, it's anyone who's got significant injury issues potentially leading up until like week one. Like we had Miles Sanders, he just tweaked his groin again, so he's sitting here in round 7, middle of that range, and he could significantly fall. Kendre Miller is also another guy who the whole New Orleans situation super chaotic, and you don't know like where he's going to go. Like people are talking about he's a great value. Some people are saying he's not, but it's a complete mystery bag with the players they're possibly bringing in, especially if they sign Hunt. It's a complete mystery bag. And the final guy is Joe Mixon. I know Prue saw that report come out yesterday from Drew, the like fantasy
Yep.
football player we all fire. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is bad news. So I expect Mixon to be significantly devalued just because you don't know when that suspension is coming, if it's coming this year at all. But he's the biggest red flag of quote unquote bell cow. Could be a top 5-10 guy, or he might miss like half the season. So I would say Joe Mixon's the biggest guy that's going to take a significant drop until we get some more context on the situation.
Yeah, that tweet and news with Joe Mixon's legal issues is definitely going to tank his redraft because of the uncertainty. But I think based on previous NFL procedures, they wait until the courts and the legal system decide anything until they do their suspension. So, I mean, like you said, we're 4 weeks away and football starts. So he may be a value, at least, especially early on in the season. But it could come November time and the league comes out with a suspension.
Right.
So that is a risk you're playing with. I understand
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I understand the risk and the uncertainty, but I mean, if he's there in the 5th round, take him.
I mean, right? Like that's just the thing about Mixon is it's a value. Like it's all volume. He's never been a super efficient running back or anything like that, but he's just living off of. He's been a volume king, and we saw last year he was devalued and he had a really good year. So if you're willing to buy into that uncertainty, particularly in redrafts, because it's not as daunting as Dynasty because it's just 1 year, right? So it's not going to linger for 4 or 5 years. Like it's only 1 year. So you know what? You dive into that uncertainty. And I remember like with the Scott Fish Bowl, we saw a lot of people doing this with Alvin Kamara. Like we had no idea about that suspension news. And his range of outcomes was massive. People took him in like the 5th round. Some people got him in the 10th round. And it's just depending on what league you're in and how, risk averse you are. So I think the running backs in particular are the funnest group for this because volume matters the most for those guys and it significantly changes them. So yeah, it's always fun looking at these guys through that filter, I'd say.
Yeah. Speaking of the New Orleans Saints and the Kareem Hunt situation, which team do you think Kareem Hunt signs with? Looks like he's back on the market. He's a hot name on the market at the moment.
Well, yeah. And speaking of like, it's so confusing because, right, he went to Indianapolis after they said he had a great visit with New Orleans, and then Indianapolis was happy with the visit as well. Doesn't sign with either team. Like realistically, I think it's just money. Like he wants more money than teams are willing to pay because if they wanted to pay him, they would have already signed him. Same thing with Zeke. Like all these older vets, Leonard Fournette, they're just not getting the deal they want to see, right? So they're going to at some point sign. It's just when is that going to happen? We only have 4 weeks for them to figure it out. So those dominoes are going to fall shortly, and then it's just going to be chaotic. Where imagine somebody signs in Kansas City, it's going to take some values. Somebody comes into New Orleans, that just gets even worse. Or the whole Jonathan Taylor potential holdout, or Las Vegas holdout with Josh Jacobs, right? Like we don't have the certainty with it. So it's a giant bag of mystery with these running backs at the moment. And it's kind of terrifying, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and then you brought up 2 more names that their ADPs could drop in Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs because they could hold out like Le'Veon Bell. What are the chances of both Taylor and Jacobs holding out when week 1 rolls around?
Well, the interesting thing for JT is he doesn't really have any, like, he can't really do anything, right? Because he's still under contract. He's under that rookie contract, and the team could just be like, guess what? You have to play, or they're going to fine you, or he's not going to get the credit for like a year in the system. So then if he just held out, same thing would happen next year. So there's really nowhere for him to go unless he's super firm and the Colts just give in and they're like, you know what? We're going to trade him away. And if that happens, then it's just who knows what happens. But he's kind of stuck. Jacobs, at least he could be a free agent, right? So after this year, say if he does hold out, they're like, guess what? We'll tag you. And if they try to tag him again, then it's a massive amount of money. So I think the Jacobs situation is a little bit different just because he's a little bit farther along on his contract. So it's a little bit better for him. I think JT's a little bit more stuck than Jacobs, to tell you the truth.
Right.
And
are you drafting Jacobs?
Yeah, so he's falling a bit more. Like if you go to traditional like redraft ADP, Jacobs is in that second round already, where Taylor's in the first round, right? Or like the back half of the first round. Sorry, I'm reading this wrong. Taylor's in the second round. Jacobs is like in the almost the third round. So at that cost, you're getting a potential bell cow who we saw last year, who was very good. So I'm fine taking the gamble on Jacobs. Just you have to know that there's a massive range of outcomes with Jacobs where realistically, if he doesn't play, like you're kind of cooked because it's that value is the third round. Are you drafting either of these guys, or are you just kind of just passing on them?
It depends on the league. If it's starting 3 wide receivers, I'm passing on them. If it's starting 2 wide receivers, I may take up on Jacobs. I am shying away from Jonathan Taylor, mainly because even if he plays, his touchdown are going to get cut because of Anthony Richardson's just taking off. And he's not going to get passes, right? Anthony Richardson's not going to dump off. We've seen it over and over again. Mobile quarterbacks do not dump off to their running backs. So I think I'm out on JT this year. But again, he could, like you said, the range of outcomes. So it's a huge swing. So it could be he could return RB1 value, but I'm just not taking that risk at the turn of the first. I'd rather go someone like Devontae Adams there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Adams because he's got the whole quarterback mystery box uncertainty, but he's so good. That's where I was like, why is he going off wide receiver? And this is a complete different tangent, but he's devalued in another round, and I'm like, just draft him. It's fine. Like you know what you're getting with him. He's very good. I wouldn't worry about it. It's a far less, not as wide of a range of outcomes as someone like Jacobs or JT, right? So then you're getting high-end production. So it's like, yeah, if you want to just fall into Devontae Adams and count the points, I'm fully on board with that every time.
Yeah. I realistically am curious to see why the Raiders haven't pursued Kareem Hunt or Zeke Elliott or Dalvin Cook. We haven't seen any much reports come out where they've entertained those folks with Jacobs holding out. So that's an interesting piece of news, or the lack thereof, that's playing out this preseason.
Right, and it's not like they like Zamir White. There have not been any glowing reports on Zamir White either, the guy who was getting pumped up last year. But yeah, they're still kind of just stuck. They brought in some veteran. I can't remember who it is. It's really cheap, a guy that doesn't matter. They brought in somebody, but he's basically non-existent. So I'm just blanking on the name, which I feel like an idiot for doing that. But yeah, it's if Jacobs holds out, then it's Zamir White, and it's just a bag of mystery, and you're like, it's probably a backfield to avoid, to tell you the truth, just because that offense might not be that good. We'll see. They got Garoppolo. He's at least he can be a decent quarterback, but it could be a rough year for Vegas in 2023 with that if he holds out.
Yeah. The other backfield I'm interested in is the New York Jets, right? We've heard so much news and rumors that Aaron Rodgers definitely wants Dalvin Cook or someone like Dalvin Cook to come. So that's another player I'm sort of out on is Breece Hall. He's returning from injury. There might be competition. Yes, he's very efficient with his touches, but that efficient might take a while to gain. And getting him in the second round is a premium to play.
Yeah, if you're paying second round cost for Breece Hall, I'm out. I've seen him kind of slipping into that 3-4 range, and if it's in that range where you're round 4, I'm just gonna bet on talent in that situation. And if it burns me, it could totally burn me. I think it's interesting how the dominoes are shifting. Wherever Cook signs, it's going to change ADP. If that is Miami or New York, because those seem to be the most prevalent spots, right? And there's reports keep coming out. And we all thought Cook was going to sign there, where all the reports were they're not going to let him leave the building until he signs, right? Obviously, he has not signed yet. So it's probably a money situation once again. But wherever Cook goes, he's going to see volume. Even with Breece, he's going to, just take all of those backup spots and all the work. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I think Breece and Javante's always been a fun debate this offseason, right? Because Javante is going rounds behind Breece, but everything we've heard from Javante has been better. He's in a better position. He's healing faster. He's coming back sooner, which was I don't think anyone expected that because his injury seemed more severe. But there was a report where they said Javante's 100%, and he was going in around 6, round 7. And I'm like, shoot, you could do what we've done where you grab both him and Pirine. You grab the 1-2 and you got the backfield locked down. But at a reduced cost, I'm fine smashing on Javante just because it seems that he's going to be healthy. So if you want it super late, you want to just push it back farther instead of Breece, just grab Javonte, and that offense could significantly take a step forward this year. And he could be this year's Josh Jacobs. I don't think that's going to happen just because they have P. Ryan. He's going to see some work, but like he's probably the closest one of the guy that's just fallen and could massively see a value spike if someone's willing to bet on it.
Yeah. We'll definitely bring up Javonte as one of the potential risers in ADP as more reports come out. I wonder if like the non-signing of Kareem Hunt and Devin Cook is due to making sure they have roster spots for playing the first 2 preseason games, and then they may wait as they cut the roster down to sign them.
It could be. Well, and like the Jets, their whole line's in kind of a mystery box. Hi. Where they don't know how the line looks. It's questionable at best. So they're trying to figure it all out. And so they want to make sure they have the money to sign those linemen before they focus on the running back. I know. Hey, I need you to okay. So it could be that. And yeah, this is my daughter Cecilia. She's home with me trying to watch a movie, so she gets to join the party, I guess. But yeah, so that O-line might be the bigger reason why they don't sign him. And then once they get the O-line figured out and they're comfortable with it, then they sign Cook, right? And then it's just the stone gets going, the next team, and it goes on from there. So it's fun to kind of play this what-if situation, right? Just because we don't know.
Yeah. Now, sort of taking away from the running backs, because they're the easiest group to target when ADP fallers are discussed. Do you have a wide receiver in mind that could see his ADP fall?
So the one that just got injured is Jalen Waddle. So like of those higher end like wide receivers, right? He's going around 2, round 3. If that injury comes out and it is severe, where it's like a broken rib, he's gonna miss some time. I could see him significantly falling. But if you're looking at just in general, not based on injury, then it could be maybe like Metcalf if more reports come out. The Calvin really one is the most interesting to me just because he's being steamed up to the point where he's creeping in round 3, right? So I'm not sure who I would pick as the faller.
So I think, the wide receiver room is the complete opposite of the running back room, right? It's hard to find someone that's going to be falling in ADP because with training camp reports coming out and, this wide receivers making spectacular catches, they're getting hyped up as the season comes. But I think the one person I think that is going to fall is Mike Williams. As reports come out with Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer, catching those deep balls from Justin Herbert, Mike Williams is going to be one of the odd men left out. So a lot of people are going to shy away from Mike Williams. But we truly don't know what the target share is going to look like with the Chargers this year. They've got a really good, solid wide receiver core. It's not like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams haven't been injured before. So that room is a mess, and Mike Williams is one of the cheaper values there. So if healthy and Keenan Allen misses time, you could see Mike Williams getting the snap percentage at a discount. So I think that's one player I think that might see a dip in ADP is Mike Williams. And I think similar to DK Metcalf, another player is Tyler Lockett. As more and more JSN hype happens through this offseason, I think more people are going to start digging Tyler Lockett. But we haven't heard any reports that Tyler Lockett is, just going to hand over his snap percentages to JSN. So
yeah, he's just too good. Like that's the thing about Lockett is it could work out. Like realistically, best case scenario for JSN is an injury to Lockett or Metcalf, and that's how he smashes his ADP. But it's going to be like 60 to 70% of the targets around those 3 players. So if you're okay with it, just like giving you high floor plays, like all 3 of those guys should be very high floor plays this year. So I'm on board with you with that one.
Yeah. I was saying Mike Williams was a player that his ADP would fall, as well as, we get reports of Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer
Right. It's just
from camp.
the more hype we get out of those guys, and particularly like we've seen a lot of Quentin. If you've been on Twitter, you've seen a lot of Quentin Johnson hype lately. So it does kind of bring down Mike Williams just a little bit because he does get pumped up being in that offense, but like we know the Mike Williams experience, it's chaotic to say the least, right? Where it's never straightforward the whole way. It's always up and down roller coaster. So people might just push him down a little bit further and a little bit further because he's going like pick 60. It looks like right now. I'm looking at Fantasy Pro, so that is pretty low. But I could see him falling below Lockett, Ayuk, and those guys in like pick 80.
Yep. All right. Before we flip the script to risers, we're going to play our ad.
This podcast is sponsored by The League Winners. Check them out at theleaguewinners.com.
All right. Let's stay on wide receivers because I think this is easier, right? Some of the risers you're going to see with wide receivers. I think the one name that comes to mind is George Pickens. He's having a spectacular training camp. His catches are unreal. And I think as more hype goes around the Steelers offense, I think his ADP is going to start creeping up.
Yeah, it's. Do you expect him to pass his teammate Deontay in ADP at some point?
I think he may. I think he may as more reports come out of the camp with his chemistry with Pickett and the spectacular catches he does.
It's fat. Like that's the one thing. Like you see the video, and videos are always like that catches your attention. So you see just another massive highlight. And it's like, yeah, this guy does this one thing extremely well. So yeah, I can see it. I would totally be on board with that because I love me some Deontay. So if people want to push Pickens up, keep going. Like let's do it. I'm fully on board with pushing George Pickens farther and farther up, so I get a discount on Deontay.
I think what really intrigued me with Pickens was Randy Moss's comment that he's one of the best young wide receivers, and you kind of see shades of Randy in there, right? He's not a great route runner. He can't separate, but he's got this ability to catch the ball. Yeah. That's unheard of. But again, it's the highlights, right? It's like you only see the highlights. You don't see the drops and whatnot. So how consistent is that going to be? Is it truly going to be at the Moss level where he's catching everything in his front of vicinity?
Right. He better find some afterburners if he's trying to get on the Randy Moss level because the weirdest thing about Randy Moss is like he never looked like he was running fast just because like he's a long strider. But you see him and he's just blowing past guys on the field. It's like it would always trick my mind. I'm like, he doesn't look that fast. And then you see the corner just falling behind and the safety, and it's just like, yeah. So, but Pickens is interesting just in general because he had a solid rookie year. I know people on Twitter can't stand him, but he was solid as a rookie. Like he ran a ton of go routes. He did particular routes that are difficult. So if he can improve in a year or two, there is definitely room for him to, take some more of those targets and be a solid fantasy option. So yeah, I could see the case for George Pickens for sure. Like if people want to jump onto that early, ride with it. And if Pickett takes a step forward, then that's how you're all of a sudden that wide receiver 40 or 35 or whatever he's going at finishes at wide receiver 20, right? And you're that's a win.
That's a win. Speaking of other risers, I mean, a bunch of the rookies, right? Rookie hype is full swing right now, and a lot of them are going to get tested in the preseason games coming up. So obviously, your round one rookies are going to start creeping up in their ADP. I think, but more so the likes of Jonathan Mingo, Marvin Mims, and Rice out of Kansas City are going to start creeping up ADP boards. And in talking about second-year wideouts, Sky Moore is going to get increase in ADP as we get closer and closer to September.
He's the one that is constantly hear stuff coming out of Kansas City. Like I know there's been a lot of hype around Kansas City because it's Patrick Mahomes' offense, right? They're like everybody's great, but if you listen to what people are saying, like Moore's going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. Like that's clutch. And that's what you want to see. So if he's basically taking over that Juju role, which is the word is like, that's what he's going to do. So he's going to play some inside, play some outside, but he's going to be on the field and running all the routes. Like and he's going so late. Like Sky Moore's going, where is he? I just saw him. He's like pick 180 or something. Like 137. So that's round 12, 13.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't cost you anything. So if you want to take a gamble on a second round deflated wide receiver, like I like taking a chance on Sky Moore just because, it's Kansas City and it's Patrick Mahomes. So if you hit with him or if you hit with Rice, any one of those guys, yeah, that's absolutely, you can see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, with Kansas City, the wide receiver 1 is Kelsey. The wide receiver 2 changes week to week.
Yeah.
So, but if you get Sky Moore as your third wide receiver, there's going to be those boom weeks that he alone just wins you the game.
I think he's very interesting from that perspective, right? Like if you hit on those boom weeks, like you could win your league, or not your league, those weeks, you could win those matchups. Yeah. I think another interesting guy that is pushed down boards a lot is Elijah Moore. And there's been a ton of hype on around Elijah Moore, who's going right in that Jameson Williams, Rashad Bateman, Tyler. I don't know why Tyler Boyd's going in this range. Doesn't make sense to me. But like he's going in that range of picks. Like it's like 150. So he's even further down. And if you think Deshaun Watson taking that step forward, that could be a guy. The hype continues, and we see his ADP rise, where he's by the time first week rolls around, he's like pick 120. So he gains like 30 spots just based on the hype. So I could see something like that happening, just because they need a wide receiver too. Yeah. Unless they don't really have anybody besides Amari Cooper. So somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. Talking the flip side, ADP fallers. We already did that on wide receivers, but I think the one person we missed was Rashad Bateman, because he's injured, and I don't think we're going to see him in the preseason. I think he starts falling, and in contrast, you kind of see Zay Flowers kind of going up the board.
Yeah.
So I think Zay Flowers he's going to go probably a round or 2 higher than Bateman.
I think that's how it should be. Like, so Bateman finally just got back to practice, whatever, from what I heard. So like he's finally going to be on the field, but he's still coming off an injury. Zay Flowers doesn't have any of that. Like he's been injured in college previously, but he's healthy going into the year. So yeah, I could see those two diverging by like a round or 2, and that completely makes sense.
Yeah. The other interesting thing is going to be Tampa Bay, right? Is the preseason, is it going to show us that, the quarterbacks are relying on Godwin through the middle, or are they actually taking shots down the field to Evans or someone like Evans? So that's going to be an interesting game to watch, is how Mayfield and Trask are attacking defenses in the preseason. And based on that, I think I fully expect Godwin's ADP to rise and Evans to fall.
Yeah. So an interesting nugget that I found when I was browsing the situation was the fact that Godwin saw 27% like of his targets were screens the last 2 years with Brady. That's massive. And I was like, wait, what? That's like, I didn't expect him really to be a screen guy, but Brady had the most pass attempts in NFL history last year, right? So they were slinging it over. So I do think it's interesting, but if like Evans falls even further and Godwin rises, like I'm just going to take Evans at the discount, and just because I still think he's a good wide receiver, and I have no idea how the situation is going to go. So if they diverge even further than they currently are, like I'll just go with the cheaper guy, because to say I'm concerned about that offense in general is an understatement. Like it's Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. You don't know what you're getting, right? So I'll go on the cheaper guy of those two. But I could definitely see where Godwin rises, and he's really expensive compared to Evans.
Yeah, I saw that tweet, and it was definitely an interesting tweet, but the tweet assumed that Godwin is just good at screens.
No, yeah, he's a good wide receiver. Like I don't think
he's a good wide receiver though. So that was a very interesting tweet. All right, jumping back to the running backs. Let's see if we can identify some ADP risers in the running back rooms. I think the one name is Tony. He's already up there, but Tony Pollard. I mean, the Cowboys really haven't been talking to anyone, or at least rumors haven't been coming out about Elliott going back or signing up Dalvin Cook. I think that just cements Tony Pollard into the high second round come trade season.
he's in that late. He's right next to Ramondre, so he's kind of that late 2-3 range. He honestly, he should already be up that high. Like he should be going early round 2, if you ask me. So yeah, I am fully on board with this. And if they do sign someone, I wouldn't really be worried about it. Like Tony Pollard is going to get his work. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. So I get it. You could be worried about Cook or Fournette, or if they bring Zeke back, right? There's still plenty of like touches to go in that backfield without Tony Pollard. So don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm all on board. Let's prop his ADP up because that's where it deserves to be.
Yeah, and I know you'll love the next guy, James Cook. I think as we see him make some plays in the preseason, possibly in week 2 and week 3 of preseason, I think his ADP skyrockets.
Yeah, he's RB31, and I'm just asking myself what the heck we're doing here. Like, do you want the RB1 in Buffalo, or do you not want the RB1 in Buffalo? Is my thought process on this. So yeah, I could see him jumping in the round like 5-6 range, because like right now we're talking 8-9, so he is devalued significantly. And I have him as like when I put in my rankings of league winners, I had him at RB20, and I was like, yeah, I'm bullish on James Cook. What can I say? So I'm kind of already there with where he's at. So. Hopefully, I mean, hey, you come join me. We can have a party together on the James Cook train. Like, I'm all aboard that. But and I think another interesting guy is the guy in Miami, Devon Achane, right? If we keep seeing those highlights we're talking about with Cook, if we see those where Achane, because there's been a lot of hype around him, I could see him fully rise. Like, he could rise a couple rounds or two, because in that range of picks, you're starting to get into backups where guys are like, we don't know uncertainty, right? So you want to take shots on guys who could, take a backfield and be the RB1. So that's where I like betting on Cook, and I like betting on A-Chain, because it's like, it's super cheap and it's not going to kill you even if they don't hit this year. So yeah, I can see both those guys rising.
Yeah, and it's true. The Dolphins don't really have a third receiving option, and they pass a lot for someone that came from the Kyle Shanahan theory. They pass at an alarming rate. And Aiton could benefit from just being a third down receiving back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as the season goes on, McDaniel uses him more and more. I think Damian Harris might also rise because people will start speculating that he may take the goal line work over Cook. He's like way down there with Jamal Williams.
Yeah, he's dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, I see him. Oh, he's right next to your boy Devin Singletary in ADP.
Yep.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I mean, you're just, especially with all the talk of Buffalo, like we've heard out of the quarterback's mouth too, like he particularly wants to change. Like he's been a running juggernaut. He wants to kind of not be as reliant in the goal line. And if you have someone who's good at goal line work, which is Damian Harris, he could do the job for you. He's way bigger than James Cook, right? So if he's in short yardage and he's in at goal lines, like you're talking one of the last picks of your draft. So yeah, if he goes up a round or two, even at that, it's like it's not, it's not expensive, and he can still massively outproduce his ADP there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just like betting on those good offenses like that, where it's they're gonna score points and a lot of touchdowns. So might as well swing on those running backs.
I wasn't going to bring Devin Singletary up because I want to keep his ADP suppressed, but that's possible. But you're right. I think Singletary ADP goes up as well as we get closer and closer to the season. And in similar vein, Rashad Penny's ADP is going to probably go up as well as we get closer and closer to the season.
Yeah, I love me some Rashad Penny. So I'm like, you know what? Just give me that old bag of bones that's injured, but who's one of the best rushers of the football in the league. I'll take a gamble. I mean, it's the Eagles offense, and that line is stacked. It's a perfect rushing situation. So if he stays healthy, he's going to out-exceed his ADP, but he's never stayed healthy, so it probably won't happen. But if it does, you'd be loving life, because you're like, you know what? The guys are going to get a bunch of yards on the ground, and that's what you like to see.
Yeah. Speaking of ADP risers, I think Cam Akers is going to start creeping up more than a round than he is right now. And we'll see if they actually play him in any preseason game or hold him out. If they hold him out, that's a clear sign that they want to keep him healthy for this start of the season. So I think Akers, come the last week of preseason, he could sneak into a round or two above his current ADP.
Yeah, because he's right in that Kenneth Walker, Miles Sanders, or Rashad White range where it's like pick 45 to 60. I could see him easily passing Walker just because Walker's injury, you don't know when that's happening, so he's going to keep dropping. So I could see him leapfrogging and like basically switching spots with Walker where he goes ahead of Miles, and it's kind of a similar bet. Like the Carolina offense doesn't have many weapons. The Rams offense doesn't have many weapons. Like they have Cup, but they don't have much else, right? So the case you're making is it's going to be a volume play. He's going to see a lot of volume. Same thing with Miles Sanders, right? So if he rises up above, I could totally see it.
I think another interesting backfield is the Redskins. I think the entire backfield is deflated at the moment with the Commanders. Wow.
Yeah.
Old school. I grew up in Baltimore. Sorry. It's like
that's all right.
It's like so. It's still like it was funny the other day. I was writing the article and I had to put a picture of Devontae, and I see him in the Raiders helmet, and my mind goes Oakland Raiders, and I'm like, no, not Oakland.
I did that. I would do that with San Diego. It'd be San Diego Chargers, and I'm like, wait a second, something's up here. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's LA Chargers. My bad. I'm sorry. It's just it's hard to break those traditions, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is this dude. But yeah, like you're saying, like with certain of these guys, there's a pretty easy case you can see them talking themselves into where the ADP rises. It doesn't take much. All you need is a couple of good more reports. They have a game where they flash or two, and they're going to jump up because we are reactionary, to say the least. Like, that's what we do. We see a guy busting 80-yard run, and we're like, all right, steam him up. Let's go. This is what happened with freaking Gabe Davis last year. Like, made a play in the preseason. We were already hyping him up, and he was just, by the end of the preseason, he was in like the round 3, round 4 range, and I was just like, woo, baby, this is getting bullish. But, you'll see a few guys like that. They'll rise. It's going to happen.
Speaking of the Commanders, I saw an interesting tweet the other day about how players are complaining to Ron Rivera with the intensity of their new offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. I wonder how that's going to play out because if he's been going too hard on them, players tend not to respond to that sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting, you could say. I saw that too, and I was like, why are you airing this dirty laundry right now? Like, this is not stuff you do weeks before the season. So I don't know. Rivera's just weird. He has his style and he likes his guys. So obviously he likes Bieniemy because if he didn't, they wouldn't have hired him. But it's just funny how I guess Eric Bieniemy is such a hard ass. But you didn't hear any of this in Kansas City, right? Nobody was like, oh yeah, Bieniemy's riding us too hard. Like we have these guys that can't deal with it. So I think it more speaks to the broken culture that is the Commanders, like their whole everything going on there. Because like that stuff should not be coming. It shouldn't be coming out. But yeah, you have everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, the young players. It's like it's like just no. It's just the culture's broken. That's why they don't keep winning. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting how that backfield, because we literally don't know. Like people are like, take a shot on Gibson, take a shot on Robinson, or I'm like, or your last pick, you could take freaking Chris Rodriguez, right? And maybe he earned some work because they brought in Bieniemy. Bieniemy supposedly likes Chris Rodriguez. There's all these narratives you can run with.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I just prefer to just avoid it unless it's like a best ball in a very deep draft. I just don't, because you need Sam Howell to be good, and that's another question mark we don't know. And if you get to a situation where it's just question mark after question mark after question mark, it's like you could just avoid it if you don't trust in it, right? And that's kind of what I've been doing with my drafts. It doesn't always work out. Case in point, the Seahawks last year, people avoided it and they seriously regretted it, myself included. But it's just, so it depends on how much risk you want to invest in this, and if you're willing to, then their ADPs are all dirt cheap, so you could literally get that backfield. It won't cost you much, the entire backfield.
I could see a scenario where either Robinson or Gibson ADP starts rising based on some of the plays that Bieniemy has them execute during the preseason games. So if one of them is explodes for a long screen pass or a run, I could see their ADPs going up.
I could for sure see it with Gibson. Like if he, like you're talking about, takes a screen pass, takes to the house because he's still an athletic freak. You see that and you're like, oh baby, it's Antonio Gibson time. By the way, did you see them where they asked him? He's like, don't call me Gibby. That's not my nickname. And everybody's like, all right, I guess we gotta call you AG Tony now or whatever. And I was like, well, it's not Gibby anymore. So, but yeah, like people still love Antonio Gibson. They're dug in on Antonio Gibson. So of the three, like I could see his ADP rising just because people really don't like James Robinson. He saw a ton of volume last year. He saw 214 touches and people.
Brian Robinson.
Sorry about that. Brian Robinson. But yeah, he saw 214 touches and people are like, you know what? We just don't like him. So even though he got shot in the leg and came back last year, and that's a whole nother situation, right? Yeah. So he could be better this year. He's not dealing with that. So yeah.
He's one of my favorite picks in my Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah,
I got him pretty late. So
right. It's good value. I like it too. People, I kind of like buying into the quote unquote ugly players sometimes because that's how you get those massive gains. So if he sees the work he did last year, like you could pay off massively, especially in that format too.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up, but we're gonna do some quick hitters with quarterback ADP risers. I'm gonna go and say Anthony Richardson. He's gonna blow his current ADP. Based on preseason games alone, I could see him even in redraft going high as round 2.
Woo!
In redraft.
And it's just one QB redraft?
Yes, because I mean the allure is going to be there, right? He's going to show off his Cam Newton style playing style, and someone's going to be like, I want that upside. Because in round 2, you could get away from in single QB, maybe not as super flex definitely, but in single QB, I think he goes right after Lamar Jackson, I think.
Yeah, I could see him pushing into if we're going like one QB. Like I'm looking at the players that are going ahead. I could see him pushing right behind Fields. Like I could see people going past Watson because of how bad Watson was last year, and just be like, you know what, we're just gonna chase that upside because like he's kind of in that Cousins, Geno Smith, Tua range. I could see him passing Tua, passing Dak, passing Geno, and going up like get steamed up significantly just because people are like he's the most athletic quarterback of all time. So let's ride with it and see what happens. And I'm fully on board with the Richardson train. But if he's round 5, I ain't touching him. Like that's just I'm not doing that. But I could see the situation where he gets pushed up. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you caught me off guard. I'm still in super flex mode.
I was like round 2. Oh my god,
round 2 doesn't make sense.
I was like, no way. I was like, okay, maybe. I mean, it's possible. But yeah, it was like.
I mean, Mahomes goes round 2 sometimes. It's like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sometimes like one of those guys will push in around 1, but realistically, those top 3, Allen, Hurts, and Mahomes are all going round 2, and then it's kind of pick your flavor of Burrow, Jackson, Herbert, Lawrence, Fields, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, but I could see Richardson sneaking into falling in right under Jackson and Fields.
It would be fascinating for me. Like besides Anthony Richardson, if we get positive news that Kyler is playing, I could see him rising. Just because there's so much uncertainty with Kyler. Like we have no idea. He might not play down this year, and we still there's nothing coming out of the camp that he's gonna play. But if we get a report that he's playing in week 1, his ADP is gonna rise. Like I don't know how it wouldn't rise because he's going QB 20 to 25. He's just basically free in redraft. So if we get news on him, like I could see his ADP skyrocketing just because he's a good fantasy quarterback. No matter how you feel about him and his lack of work ethic and video games and all that nonsense, right? But yeah, he's a good fantasy quarterback. So I could see that case where he just shoots up to the moon, just skyrockets.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't heard too much out of the Cardinals camp, which is
it's so ugly. It's just it's rough. I don't like it's James Conner, Hollywood Brown, and I'm not even super confident in Hollywood Brown this year. And then it's like maybe you take a flyer, Trey McBride in the last round. You want to go Dortch or one of those guys, Michael Wilson maybe, but man, if it's Clayton Tune and Colt McCoy, oh boy. Could be rough. Like they could be the worst offense and terrible defense. So they might not, win 2 games. So, scary. It's very scary.
Tanking for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, for real. Who on the flip side, who's the quarterback you expect their ADP to fall?
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
Right.
Hmm, that's an interesting one. Who could I pick? Yeah, I don't have one off the top of my head at the moment. Maybe Lamar Jackson, based on some reports that he's been throwing interceptions, but that could be just him trying to get used to new offense. Um,
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, there's not really a lot of guys you could see them technically falling. Like, you could see a guy like fall a spot or two. But I mean, maybe if it's Watson and he's still like their offense still isn't clicking, right? And they're like struggling through the preseason, maybe his ADP would fall. But I
but
don't
does he
see any.
play enough in the preseason?
Yeah,
He
I
didn't
don't.
ever
Yeah,
play.
I haven't heard anything about like who's playing, who's not playing for Cleveland. So yeah, if he's not playing, then it's tough. Like you basically just have to bet on one of these guys to get injured. Is that like
Yeah,
because it seems fairly like you could push Bryce Young down a little bit, or I mean obviously there's the San Francisco quarterbacks, but they're so cheap. Like
right, exactly.
whoever's the day one like they started, they're gonna get pushed up. But yeah, I kind of actually don't. Maybe Russell Wilson, but the hype coming out of Denver has been really good. So unless that
Yeah,
changes, then they just look awful. But it's kind of it's hard to pick one. I would just pick based on ADP. Maybe Deshaun Watson, like that's the best case. But like
yeah,
I'm
that's most likely.
not super confident about it because like he's been a top 5 quarterback like multiple years in the past. So if he's like that, then yeah, like I get it. So yeah, it's kind of tough with quarterbacks to kind of just pick one guy. Like you know what? No.
The one interesting tweet I saw though was someone said that Trevor Lawrence is just expensive Dak Prescott. I kind of like
Oh,
that.
it was friggin' Hitman. The guy from the Footballers, Mike. What's his last name? Is it right?
Right.
Yeah, he was the one that put that out, and I was like, you know what? That makes sense. Like, I don't really disagree with you. So yeah, I was on board with that. I was like, but you don't really think about it that way.
No,
but then
you
you go big picture. You're like, you know what? It kind of makes sense. It
does. So that was an interesting name. So I wonder if Lawrence maybe drops a little bit, but we'll see. I doubt
maybe.
it.
Yeah, he's just I don't know. People love Lawrence. I heard Mina Kimes talking about Lawrence, and they were doing their like picking quarterbacks to start, and she basically had like 2 quarterbacks above him, like to start a franchise with. She was like, "Yeah, give me Trevor Lawrence." I was like, "Whoa, baby, that is bold." But
Whoa.
people love
Mahomes and
T-Law.
Allen and then Lawrence. Wow.
Yeah, because like you're not, you're taking age and youth and all that stuff into it, so it's kind of like a dynasty mindset. But
yeah, the running style, I guess, of Hurts probably deterred her.
Yeah, because people think it's like the situation more than it is his overall talent. But I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, people love him. Do you want to try and do some tight ends real quick?
Yeah, let's go with tight ends.
All right. I mean, Travis Kelce's just a god. Like I don't. It's just like we just do that. So for me, the guy that I've constantly been drafting as ADP has been Mark Andrews, and I'm at like 75% in my redraft leagues. Like I've been hammering Andrews as ADP. Yeah, I didn't realize it, but then I looked at my teams and I go, oh my goodness, because Andrews keeps coming to me and he'll like fall in the back of the second, and I'm like, all right, Mark Andrews again, here we go, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take this guy. Nope, there's Andrews again. So. Yeah, I'm fully on board with Mark Andrews. So I'd push his ADP up. I think he's really cheap. But if it's those tier 3 guys, is there anyone of that group of those 4 or 5 guys where it's like Pitts, Goddard, Hawkinson, Waller? Is there anybody you see there like their ADP like taking a significant jump?
Yeah, I actually think Waller is going to start going above the likes of Goddard and Hawkinson in some leagues. And even Pitts maybe. And I could see where Pitts starts losing his ADP, especially if Desmond Ryder has struggles in preseason games.
Right.
So I think those two go in diverse directions.
Yeah, because like Waller was super cheap like a couple months ago, where like he was around 8, and I was like, "What's happening here? This is the deal." He's pushing into around like 7, around 6, but yeah. He's definitely skyrocketing, so it's interesting to see. I'm not surprised. Like he could be the tight end 3, no problem.
And I think people on the clock when they say they want a tight end and they're looking at Pitts, Goddard, and Waller. I mean, there's so many good cases for Waller to outperform Pitts and Goddard. Right, Goddard's got a crowded offense. Will he get the target share or not? Whereas Waller is like already being held as the wide receiver one on that offense. Pitts, the quarterback could suck. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we thought this exact same situation about Daniel Jones last year, where everybody thought he was terrible, right? Where they're like, "Oh, that offense, Daniel Jones is the worst," and he actually was a solid. So you could make the case where Pitts has that type of year with not Daniel Jones, with Desmond Ridder, like he outperformed what people expect, and then Pitts is just to the moon because he's such a good talent. And I haven't really taken a lot of Pitts as much as I like him, but that's because I just keep taking Andrews. So I'm not going to double dip on tight end if I already have Andrews. But yeah, I like both Waller. I like Pitts. I do worry about Goddard a little bit just because, like you say, there's only so many targets in that offense. But he's more the floor play of those guys than he is like ceiling to me. If you want a solid floor play, but I mean, I'd rather just take Freiermuth like 2-3 rounds later, just if I'm going to go that route.
Yeah, I love Freiermuth, but I do think his ADP might fall depending on how Darnell Washington does in preseason games.
There's been a lot of hype around him all of a sudden, especially if he's getting all of those like red zone looks, and it's kind of like, all right, the case for Freiermuth ain't so great, but I don't know. I still expect him to do a lot of blocking, even though that you see the camp hype highlights and this dude can move, and he's the biggest guy on the field. It looks like he's bigger than some of the linemen. You're like, yeah, this guy's a freak. So there is that. It's like earned. I can see the case where it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite tight end this year is Hawkinson. I feel like he's the definition of solid. Like he's gonna get you what he's gonna get you, and people are signing away from him a little bit too much because of Jordan Addison. But I think that benefits him a little bit more.
Yeah, he was hyper targeted in Minnesota. Like he played, I'm not sure the amount of games, but he had like 84 targets in the short time he was in there in Minnesota last year. Like they brought him in. What was nice is he opened up the field for Justin Jefferson because he got to just roll the middle and he just gets to hang out. The funny thing about Hawkinson is like my buddy who's a Lions fan said he was a catch and fall guy, like because he gives you no yak. He just catches it, he falls down like Tyler Lockett. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of TJ Hawkinson. Like he's just solid across the board. He has really good metrics, but he's not really a freak athlete. It's weird. You watch him play and he doesn't separate. So he's weird. Like I've always had a hard time getting on board with him.
He reminds me of the Ravens tight ends in the likes of Todd Heap and Dennis Pitta and I'm missing someone there.
There's the Cowboys with Jason Witten for a while where he was just getting targets, but he wasn't doing a lot with them, but he was just getting volume. That's kind of how I view Hawkinson too. Like he's super safe. Like he's not going, his ADP is never going to kill you. Like you're not going to be like, oh, he killed me. He finished as tight end 6, right? It's like, yeah, he's fine. And he might be tight end 3 or 2. Like he could, if he's did what he did last year and he outproduces Jordan Addison, like he could have a really good year. But he's just the super safe floor play tight end. I just hate because he's always the most expensive of those guys. So it's like Andrews, and then it's always Hawkinson. And I'm like, I just don't want to pay a 4-round difference between Hawkinson and Goddard or whatever. Like I'd rather just go the cheaper guy. But I get it. Like I can see why people like Hawkinson.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the safest bet, you go Hawkinson. But I agree with you. I'm not picking Hawkinson in the 3rd. Maybe towards the end of the 4th, where I see him slipping, then I might pull the plug. But
I don't.
And if it's not tight end premium, it's like bye bye. Don't worry about it.
Like I don't like George as much as I love George Kittle as a talent. Like this year, like that ADP, I'm like I'm not touching him. I'm not doing it. Like when all 4 of the guys were on the field last year, like all 4 of their superstar players, Ayuk, CMC, Kittle, and Debo, he saw 13% of the targets. Like legit, like that's nothing. It's because he's such a good blocker, and I hate how Shanahan uses him and drives me crazy. It's like, dude, don't be such a good blocker. But the guy's like the best blocking tight end in the league, so it's kind of hard. You know what I'm saying? That system's designed for it. So yeah, at his ADP, like I was on that show with Aaron St. Dennis, and I was like, I'm fading George Kittle at ADP. Like I just can't do it. And he was the tight end 3 last year, and he was really good. But yeah, I'm just hands off. I'd rather just go otherwise. I just can't do it.
Yep, definitely. But right, those are some ADP risers and fallers August, and let's see how preseason and training camp hype changes as we get closer and closer to football season. But if you haven't subscribed to FF Squared on YouTube, on Spotify, we're everywhere. Follow us at the League Winners. And we'll definitely have more fire content coming out. I think next week, stay tuned. We have a awesome league that we're going to be discussing. That's for charity. So definitely, come back and listen to us next week.
Thanks for stopping, everybody, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.